All right, I got a question. Which returning Texans player is going to have the biggest breakout season in 2023? There's actually one rule, though. It cannot be a first or second rounder from 2022. It'd be too easy to say Derek Stingley, Jalen Petrie, Kenyon Green, or John Mechie. So you can't use those guys. Of the returning Texans, which is going to have the biggest breakout in 2023? There are 5 choices. Let's go through them in the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah.
All right, so what a difference a year makes. I want to look back at last year before we get into the 5 biggest potential breakouts for returning Texans not drafted in the first or second round last year. Let's look back at the draft last year and what we were saying about the draft class heading into last season, the 2021 draft class. This is an interesting case study. So looking at the draft class last year at this time, we were talking about the returning draft class. We were talking about Davis Mills. We were talking about Nico Collins. We were talking about Brevin Jordan. We were talking about Garrett Wallow. And we were talking about Roy Lopez. And I think the main dialogue was Nick Caserio really did everything that he could have done, given the fact you didn't have a first or second round pick in 2021. And Davis Mills, we don't know what's going to happen, but he's going to be your starting quarterback. Nico Collins, my gosh, he showed some good signs. Can he stay healthy? Brevin Jordan, man, is he going to turn the corner and be a contributor? His diet's changed, etc. Nick Caserio was just praising Garrett Wallow, as was Jack Easterby, as the hardest worker and the body transition and all that type. And Roy Lopez was a starter the year before, and you were expecting big things from those guys. Here we are now. Davis Mills, we don't know if he's going to be on the team. He's probably a backup. He looks more like a third-round pick than a third-round steal. Nico Collins, we're asking literally the exact same questions this year as we were last. Brevin Jordan, it would surprise a lot of people if Brevin Jordan made the team. Garrett Wallow fighting an uphill battle as well. We'll see what happens with him. And Roy Lopez is coming off a pretty disappointing season where he kind of maybe came down to earth a little bit more, and he's going to be fighting for a roster spot. So what a difference a year makes. This year, we're talking about guys who, quite frankly, were probably had disappointing rookie seasons. Outside of Dameon Pierce, Kenyon Green had a very disappointing rookie season. Derek Stingley, a lot of it was cautionary, but Derek Stingley didn't do what Sauce Gardner did, and he's on a mission now in D'Amico's system. And Jalen Petrie, outside Petrie too. Petrie had a really good season, and Mechie was not on the field for stuff that he couldn't control. So the vibe of the draft classes is different, although I think the ceiling is much higher. So I want to exclude those guys from this conversation, and I want to talk about the guys that could potentially have the biggest breakout year that are returning Texans. Let's start with Christian Harris. Number one, Christian Harris missed 5 games in 2023. He's a guy who should thrive in D'Amico Ryan's system. He's a guy who D'Amico Ryan's in the past, like in San Francisco, has gotten the most out of. When I asked this poll question, Christian Harris got the most votes. If I were voting, I would say Christian Harris as well. I think Christian Harris is a very, very solid candidate. It would not shock me to see Christian Harris lead this team in tackles. Number 2, this one's interesting. Jonathan Grenard. Much like Nico Collins, we're talking about the same things with Jonathan Grenard that we did with Nico Collins. You got to stay healthy. You got to go out there and produce. You got to show you can do it. Last year was a very disappointing year for Jonathan Grenard. He missed 9 games after missing 4 and 3 in previous seasons. Now, the difference between Grenard and Nico Collins is Jonathan Grenard has had a really, really productive year in the NFL in which he had 8 sacks. And Jonathan Grenard is going to be on a defensive line in a front 7 where he's going to have more talent around him than he's ever had. 10.5 career sacks, not much to write home about, especially when he had 8 in 2021. But we did see Jonathan Grenard have the pick 6 against Indy, which a lot of people didn't want the Texans to win, but he got the job done. I think Jonathan Grenard has a good chance to have a really productive year with D'Amico Ryans. And let's be honest, it's the final year of the rookie contract, so he probably is going to be extra motivated. So Harris and Grenard, I think, are the 2 most solid bets that you would feel best about, because you've seen it with Grenard before. You saw him put together a hell of a season a couple of years ago. If you get that season this year, I think you'll be pleased, especially with Will Anderson and the other stuff around him. But Jonathan Grenard will be another guy to keep an eye on. Next one, Nico Collins. I just can't buy Nico Collins like a lot of people are. He's had 70 catches. He has been limited by poor quarterback play, but he's missed 10 games in 2 seasons. And quite frankly, just hasn't been consistent even when he's been on the field producing. Maybe the improvement in quarterback with CJ Stroud hopefully improves the production of Nico Collins, but some of the other guys that they've brought in, even guys like Robert Woods and Noah Brown, those guys, they've produced higher in recent years than Nico Collins, and I'm not buying on Nico Collins. I love the young man. I think he's a great guy, works hard. We've talked to him. He's a friend of the show, In the Loop, Sports Radio 610, 10 to 2 Central on the Odyssey app. But Nico Collins, a lot of people buying it. It's a popular one. I'm just not going to buy Nico Collins. I'm going to have to see it. Next one, and perhaps a sleeper, Tegan Quinteriano. 7 catches in 9 games last season. Came in hurt, worked his way back. He's a good blocking tight end. He had a couple of touchdowns, had a long reception against Indianapolis. Obviously, Dalton Schultz is going to be your number 1 receiving tight end, but I could see Tegan Quinteriano having a breakout season. And what is a breakout season for Tegan Quinteriano? Maybe just a feel that he is 100%. You feel great about him being one of your 2 best tight ends in the future. Or maybe you even feel good about him starting a couple of games when the situation calls for it. I might be a little higher on Quinteriano than I should be, but I think there's a lot of potential there. And I think with a full offseason, a healthy offseason, I think this kid is going to be a little bit more productive than we'd expect. Number 5, and this one would be maybe not considered a breakout because we've seen these guys come off good years, but a higher level raise. So Titus Howard, let's say Titus Howard has a Pro Bowl caliber season coming off last year. Let's say Dameon Pierce stays healthy the whole season. He's top 5 leading rusher in the NFL. I guess that would qualify as a breakout. Although if you get the same type of or similar production, with the exception of Pierce not getting hurt, I think those would be that's something that you would take. Also got to wonder how much Singletary is going to dip into how they use Dameon Pierce. So higher level breakout is number 5. So let's reset the 5 potential breakouts, and maybe there's another one. Put it in the comments. It is the Locker Room, number 1 source for Texans daily digital content. We have Christian Harris, we have Jonathan Grenard, we have Nico Collins, we have Tegan Quinteriano, and then we have a higher level breakout in Dameon Pierce or Titus Howard. Let me know what you think. If I had to vote, I would go with Christian Harris or Jonathan Grenard. I think Grenard, all he's got to do is stay healthy. D'Amico Ryan should be able to put him in a situation to where he can have some production, which is a good thing for the defense. This could actually be a very sneaky front 7. We feel good about the secondary. It could be a sneaky front 7. Wide receivers, the biggest question mark. If Nico Collins is the answer to this question at the end of the year, that might be a good thing, or it could be symbolic of where the receiving core currently sits. Subscribe, like, appreciate everyone for rolling along. We've been putting it out consistently since we started this last season. Fun times coming. CJ Stroud's actually going to speak next Tuesday, so we're going to hear from the quarterback. We're also going to get to see these guys in action, and business is picking up. We're 100 days and change away from the start of the season. No matter what happens when it comes to the Texans, whether it's the Locker Room on YouTube, whether it's on my show, In the Loop, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we are all in this together.
Yeah, we
Have a
in
good
the
Friday.
locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do.